My name is Katrina Crespin, and I am currently the Interim Education Director at Desert Hills. So my career's basically been in education my entire life. So as far as public service is concerned, I started working for the public education system in 2007, and I stayed in there till 2016. And at that point I switched over to Desert Hills, where I'm at currently. Some of the things I've done within public service, it all has to do with the youth. So it's working with youth, getting them to express themselves, getting them to learn how to speak up for what they believe in, encouraging them to become creative and become vocal and become activists. We worked, when I was in Rio Rancho, I created the Rio Rancho Youth Poetry Community, which encouraged students to do all of those things. And after that, we intermingled over here in Albuquerque with Warehouse 508 and some of the other facilities that we have on this side of the world. My writing practice and my experience with writing and as a poet over the years fed into what I wanted to see for my students, helped me inspire them, educate them to write and express themselves as well. And once they got to a level where they felt comfortable, perform and publish as well. So my own experience gave me the goal to want my students to have that experience as well and to be able to be heard for what they had to say, because I was also given that opportunity. Through my creative writing and through my exposure with poetry, I wanted to basically share that with others, which is why I put my writing out there in the first place. So ideally, I'm inspiring others to share their work as well and have a voice as well. So many students and so many youth are silenced, and I think we all know that. They're silenced, they're not allowed to speak, they're not allowed to express themselves, they have to follow a certain norm or a certain track. And I think that they should be allowed to speak up, and I think people should pay attention to them. And especially when I was teaching, this position's a little different, but especially when I was teaching, I really encouraged students to do that and to have a voice for themselves and, to try to make a difference in the world. I want to be like water, creative as reflection in the pond's shimmering surface. I want to be ocean, calm when captured, but currents with the capacity to overturn ships and drown a man. I want to be content to fishbowl, never curious for more. I want to be elusive like rain, unpredictable as the size of each drop. I want to be water, shapeless and vast and heavy and ethereal. I want to be strong, indiscernible, and necessary.
Hi, my name is Manuel Julian Rodolfo Montoya, and I am an associate professor at the Anderson School of Management. I'll say that public service can mean many things. So I used to be a lector back home in my local church back in Mora, New Mexico. I also did a lot of public service in the community. I tried to be supportive of friends and family whenever I could. But I guess technically when I began an official career in public service was when I was appointed to serve with Senator Jeff Bingham in the U.S. Senate. I was part of his staff. I did policy analysis, and I worked as a field representative. So as a professor, you live a lot of different lives. You have to be a teacher, but in a lot of spaces you have to be in isolation, thinking about a lot of esoteric things. I do a lot of research on global political economy, and I think a lot about the role that business plays in ethical issues like human trafficking, particularly the way that most recently how smartphones affect the production of child labor and child soldiers in South Central Africa. And I also think about how we are as planetary beings, creatures that are not necessarily nationalistic. So all of those things are part of the ingredients of the things that I do every day when I write creatively. I write short stories, I write poems, but it's not very different for me to think about a zombie or a squid, both as a political object, but also as an aesthetic object that I use in my writing practice. So I have a lot of quirky things in my writing. The students that I have joke that I'm the squid zombie professor, and it's all integrated. Every single part of those ingredients They mesh together to make, whether or not I'm thinking about a research paper or writing a poem, I don't really see the difference between the two. They're not segregated. I believe in my time of flight that there will be peace for each of you, as I wished for myself in the hour of butterflies in song. And I understand now the sad thing that is known to archangels when children are born, how grace can become the tomb of shadow and cold, as we reach for light, as we rush to holy fire with our bones. My remains now turn to ice in this final verse, and voices have the power of killing me once more in death, placing my ashes in the kaleidoscope of wrath, in allegiance with the colors of contempt. I am passing into the terrifying forgetting that we all face. But I do not believe I will die. I spoke a frail tongue learned from generosity, and still I was corrupted, and still I was called a beast. But I turned those names into a house of charity. I said prayers that only you can know, my angel. Despite my fire, I hid your wings inside the mask of my own absolution. For this is the hour that man has made, the era of a fragile death, which we summoned with our handmade hearts. So shut your eyes, my baby space. You are worth every dying I have ever conceived. As the dead dance, they read our scars as cosmic flesh, and I can hear them stepping past my eyes into yours, my favorite oracle, my beloved stranger. Drink my root blood and harden my bones. Transcribe the spaces between what I have told you, tattoo them on my face of death, so when you speak my name, it is yours, that you may speak one day in peace and faith.
My name is Mary Awishi, and I'm the Development Director at KUNM Public Radio. My career began at a public radio station in Colorado, and then I had to move back east because my daughter was 15 when she started college and they wouldn't let her live in the dorms. But as soon as I could come back west, I wanted to. And so I applied for the job at KUNM, and the University of New Mexico moved me out here to Albuquerque. And I arrived on my birthday of 1999, and I've loved this city. Well, real life always informs art, right? And I've done a lot of work besides KUNM. I do a lot of work in the community. I've served on several boards. I have volunteered with gay youth every Friday night for 17 years. I've just done things that just seemed like they needed to be done, and people needed help, and so I helped them. It's just what I do. I don't think we should just be here and suck air and contribute pollution. I think we should do something for the community if we can. Well, I think art is art comes from life. It comes from your feelings, your thoughts, your experiences, but then it also, I would say, reflects back to the community some things. Sometimes an artist has a perspective that the rest of the people who are up close to day-to-day living, and they can't really take that kind of bird's eye view and look back at society and reflect back what's going on with humanity or with their community or whatever, and with people's lives. So the artist does that. So the artist gives voice to things that perhaps a person, who's going about their daily life and not doing art won't notice, or they won't know how to put it into words or into, to capture that feeling. Are you out there in the stealth night on the edge of blue, listening? Are you loving me for sending you this fix of heartbreak slid down metal, taut and wound, electric? Are you? Are you dancing with the spirits of those who left us 40, 50, 60, 80 years ago? Dancing in a juke joint in RL's living room? Are you in the field picking cotton in the broiling sun, wishing for shade, any shade, a toothpick, anything? Can you feel it? The sweat, the thirst, blur between slave and sharecropper, slave and chain gang? Can you? Are you out there in the stealth night, listening, understanding, coming closer in, becoming, blues surging through?
Well, my name is Don McIver, and I have a lot of titles. I guess personally, I say I'm a poet. Professionally, I'm a academic instructional program manager at Central New Mexico Community College. It basically means I run the tutoring center at main campus. Well, I guess public service, most of my stuff is around the poetry community, and I pretty much was just looking for a way to read my own work, and started going to open mics, and then started creating other different types of open mics, and got involved in the organizing side of it. So it was kind of by accident, selfish first for me, and then as I got along, I started to realize I was pretty good at the organizing side of it, and then just kind of it opened up a lot of different doorways for me by organizing readings and wanting to read my writing. And then what I do now is I did get an English degree, and then I finally went back and got into education teaching. And so that's was like a second career. My first career was in restaurants, so second career was back into education, and it was just because I liked writing and I liked English. So that's how I ended up where I'm at. I mean, part of my lived reality is tutoring, or actually in this case, running a center and hiring tutors that beyond writing, and also part-time faculty where I teach writing. So part of my intersection of my own private writing practice is I do, when I teach writing, I do bring up the fact that I'm a writer, and I talk about different ways that English and learning about writing has influenced my life and the way I think. And I talk about writing as thinking. I talk about writing being kind of a way of life. You start looking at the world in a certain sort of way, and that's how you process the world quite often, is through writing. And so I definitely try and foster people through teaching, using that as developing and understanding writing as a way of organizing thoughts, and a way of sometimes just getting the thoughts out of our head onto paper help. In terms of poetry, obviously the performing poetry has helped me as a public speaker. And so I do a lot of presentations for class. I'm asked to do poems, but I'm also asked just to speak in front of people at the college, primarily about what we do. And so that intersection has made me much more comfortable in front of a crowd. In fact, I kind of enjoy talking in front of crowds. I would probably do it for free at this point, which was something 30 years ago when I graduated from high school I would have never thought I would do. So, you know, it's what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do to support my writing, and it opened up a whole bunch of different avenues, and made me confront some of my own fears and realize that they're kind of exhilarating when you confront. Stage fright is not a bad thing, actually. So now we're cooking for Olivia Gatwood. Another takeout meal, bought lunch, thoughtless consumption of food. My wife asked, "Why don't you eat at home?" Because I still dream about food, about restaurant kitchens, fast food shake machines, contraptions that slice tomatoes with merely a push, steamer cabinets that hiss and moan as you open them like you're opening a safe, melting cheese on full plates that I pull from the sky with calloused hands, forearm skin that remembers the splash of hot sauces, water dropped in hot oil, and the stench. Because grease coated my clothes and shoes as I scrambled for change in my stash. Because I still dream about not getting to my tables in time, not filling that iced tea fast enough, or about having another conversation with the bar regular who comes in for fun while I pour a slightly stronger rum and coke, gin and tonic, screwdriver, and wonder how he got out of work so early every day. because of my canceled vacation because of one cook's broken collarbone, another bartender's ruptured knee, one regular's 86ing after putting a hole in my wall, and then the quiet reflection as I read the daily paper and saw he'd been killed in a standoff with APD the next day. Because my day bartender laid naked in his room after a death-dealing aneurysm for 2 days before they found him. Because my night bartender was hospitalized after shooting up, getting his arm infected and visibly shook from withdrawals when I saw him at the hospital. Because my evening cook thought it would be okay to dose the other boss. Because my morning prep cook dealt pot out the back. Because cooking makes me remember the early mornings, late nights, damaged waitresses, drunk managers, bosses who looked down over eyeglasses and then expected me to sit down with them and their wives over dinner. Because my feet hurt even now, and I don't want to stand behind a counter in a dish pit on the line, behind the bar, at the host stand, on the floor, and crunch numbers at the end of the night to make sure it all adds up. Because I worked in restaurants for 20 years in every position, at every conceivable type, 2 decades of learning how to cook, of watching my specials become menu items, my drinks get highlighted and sold, my management style leaving me being many people's first and favorite boss. Because a hospitality industry is anything but hospitable. I don't eat at home because I want to be on the other side of it for a while. I want to be a customer, a regular, some patron everyone is glad to see.
My name is Shel Sanchez. I'm the Director of Cultural Services for the City of Albuquerque.
Valerie Martinez, and I'm the Director of History and Literary Arts at the National Hispanic Cultural Center.
My career in public service began as a public school teacher. I taught in public schools for about 5 years. Then I moved to the university, the University of New Mexico, which is also a public university. And then I worked for the State of New Mexico Department of Cultural Affairs for 13 years. And after a short hiatus, I am back in public service for the City of Albuquerque.
And I spent 23 years teaching at the college and university level all over the country. Then I entered the nonprofit world doing large-scale arts and community engagement projects. And then 9 weeks ago I started with the Hispanic Cultural Center, which is a New Mexico state institution with the Department of Cultural Affairs.
In terms of writing, I've always been, I call myself an occasional poet or a very private writer. It's not something that's ever been part of my kind of public creative practice, but it's something I do a lot. It's something that really feeds the way I think about things. If I'm trying to solve a problem, I often write about it creatively, not necessarily a narrative or an essay. And so it's an important part of how I think about the world and how I do the work that I do. The only time I become a public poet is in collaboration with Valerie. And each year I participate in a project that she leads called Echo Poets, which really is a collaboration between a number of poets every year. So, yeah.
Well, I'm working on my 6th book of poetry, and I started writing when I was 13 years old. And so poetry has been just part of the fabric of my life since I was a teenager. And it really saved my life. I had trouble in middle school and high school sort of getting through the days, and poetry was a balm and a way of having a form of expression that sort of made life make sense. And then progressed from there to having a public life as a poet and also encouraging poetry to be part of everybody's daily lives. I was the poet laureate for the city of Santa Fe between 2008 and 2010, and through that position I got to engage with hundreds of Santa Feans around poetry and wanting them to feel the importance of poetry in their lives as it is part of my life. And now I'm involved in a range of poetry projects, including Echo with Shel and other women poets, that brings poetry to new audiences. And so really my life as a poet has just become an increasingly radiating life of poetry in the public sphere.
To be a potter, I'd spend my days hands in clay, wheels spinning, water splashing.
Clay responds to the smallest encouragement.
I would make this bowl again and again, this same exact green bowl.
I think the blemishes work, make it look old, authentic. It lives a life of being passed down.
I like this bowl. No pomp or circumstance, wise, nothing to hide.
It holds history in its cracks, got comfortable with its shadows long ago.
Big enough to hold spaghetti for 10, but not too big for the cabinet. It lives at the center of the table.
Big enough for popcorn when everyone watches an old movie together.
Too big for the dishwasher. It demands to be washed by hand.
Would it reminisce about the days when it was just clay, revel in nostalgia?
Would it remember the sweet breath of the artist while her hands fumbled with its form?
Always huffing in frustration, taking breaks to doubt if she was good enough.
Always laughing with surprise when it would bend for her, reveal its insides, mold to the shape of her palms.
Widening, narrowing, thickening, and flattening.
Does it dream of the kiln and often wake in fire? Does it remember how it hardened?
How every atom was forced to stiffen, realize that falling means breaking?
Or did it take the heat, lick the flames back?
Will itself to temper and become something more?
The salt and lick of taste.
Always awaiting the next offering.
The way we feed our families. Hope. Abundance.
This is a poem entitled New Mexico Fragments, and they're like 9 little shards of clay, little pieces about New Mexico. The sky's a triplet, indigo, navy, dusty pink. 13 gargantuan ravens, bits in their beaks, Asian eyes. Cheeky moon playing Jupiter. I count 19 black branches and Lorca's 3 gold letters, S-U-N. The curve of the horizon and white interior walls, which is to say, a woman and a man in a room of light and the earth supine under a violet sky, is to say, the ceremony of the body. A hand wanders to a chip of wolfenite a mile away from the arrowhead, dug up. I pull the clay up and out, round and high as I am. We cannot explain our love of mountains, clay red, dotted with piñon, chamisa, yucca. Perhaps it is the expanse between them, the sky which fills the space, immense, the breath opened up like a holy book, blank and ever blue, on and on. Seeing O'Keeffe's patio door, we cannot but think of the tongue on fire. It floats, as does the oblique darkness of door, the adobe wall going left, the sky's blue mist lifting. Here is the eye's ruse, a suspension, the leaf gone green and hot yellow, the breath, the utter silence, gone aloft. Nothing grows in this earth without diligence and cut knuckles. I nurse broccoli, eggplant, invoke the Rio Grande, capture a cup of rainwater and mete it out meticulously with cracked and unwashed hands. Why have you come, and who follows you, and how many new houses, and another paved road, and I'm telling you I love this place because so many do not live here, and there, and there. At Malpais, I thought the cold would break my bones. Your charts were useless. Your eyes went blind with the sky's glut of stars. You crushed the last glowing ember, said, "Don't touch me," and "I can die now. Why wait for something less than this?" So much snow we telemark from our front door. The dogs wander clueless over white, and the neighbor girls pack jars with snowballs, label them, line them up on the top of the backyard wall. They read F-E-B 2006 and X. And Megan says the last one's for a miracle, so it never melts. What the high desert gives to your name, one more wild chamisa, the mesa striated with iron red, spiderweb cracks on the windshield, and the monsoons, finally, one afternoon, the smell of spruce and creosote in their wake, all night, saying,
My name is Manuel Gonzalez, and I'm the current Albuquerque Poet Laureate from 216 to 218. I kind of fell accidentally into public service. It started way back when I was young, and I was getting into a lot of trouble, and it wasn't until I sat down and started writing about my problems did I start to work through them in a positive way. And that in turn has made it so that I can work with young people in high schools and middle schools, and my favorite is the detention centers, to help them look within themselves and work through some of the emotional baggage that we all carry around. So I found that poetry is a beautiful way to help us heal ourselves in that way. And so that's helped me go into the community and do free writing workshops, or even just set up safe places to perform and write poetry. And the poetry that we write is about not only the trauma that we carry around with us from our own lives, but we talk about ancestral trauma and the scars that are left on our hearts from history in that way. And it helps us to work through those things. I'm Chicano, and a Chicano is an American of Mexican descent. And it's been a long road to walk to figure out what that means for me and my family and my legacy in that way. And my intersection is when I go into the community, I can connect with those that are in the community with us, and so we can. I'm from there. I'm part of that. I live with them. So my cultural and historical background makes it so that we can work together in that way, and that's the intersection I see with my community, and as well is political activism, being active in our community and our society, and fighting the good fight for making Albuquerque a better place for all of us in that way. There's a lot of healing that needs to be done in our communities, in our barrios, in our neighborhoods, and that healing is long overdue. And one of the ways we can heal ourselves from the pain that we carry in our hearts is to write about it, or express yourself in whatever way it is, whether it's painting, writing, or dancing, whatever art or self-expression you find. It's a good way to heal yourself from the pain that you carry in your heart. And that's how I like to affect my community in that way. With watermelon mountains melting misconceptions, with crazy loco dreams and contemplative confessions, I see cholos chasing chicas. They're living mi vida loca like the ancient Mexica, with kickback khakis to camouflage clown faces. We smile now, but we cry later. I watch breakdancing b-boys battling the crossfader. My name is Albuquerque, but my friends call me Burque, as my mother makes masa with flour and manteca, rolling out her tortillas and scraping her spices in a molcajete like the ancient Azteca, as Tolteca knowledge is passed down from our grandfathers. And my mother lights a candle for La Virgen de Guadalupe. My name is Albuquerque, but my friends call me Burque, as the sands of the santuario silently cause the sound for my soul, and the patience and perseverance of the penitentes plant the seed that will one day make me whole. And the legions of Mary who pray the rosary for humanity, who don't have enough time to bend their own knees. My name is Albuquerque, but my friends call me Burque, and I'm listening to Saturday morning traditions played by musicians, the founding fathers of my self-image, those rancheras and cumbias and boleros sung with their teardrop on their vocal cords. Y volver, volver, volver. My name is Albuquerque, but my friends call me Burque, and I'm looking at a Trisco, and I'm thinking about land grants, wondering if our kids even have a chance as day turns to night and they begin to dance. You know, I was named after a duke who never left Spain, and being junior without knowing your father brings a lot of pain. My name is Albuquerque, but my friends call me Burque. Thank you.